I'm over here at my house and I did all the slab prep, poured the slab, and now I'm doing the wall insulation for the basement. I got a detail that I feel pretty proud of, so I just wanted to share that. I went with the Thurmax by DuPont sheathing. I'd ordered 1.5 inches, 2 inches got delivered. It's actually fine with me. But this has a Class A fire rating, as well as R13 insulation value. And because of the foil and I guess it's a closed cell nature of the foam in here, which also has, I guess, glass spun into it. So it's not the nicest stuff to work with, but it's got a cool fire rating and a close to 0% permeable rate. So it's basically impermeable. So what I decided to do is install it nice and clean. I've got some holes and things to patch, but really I'm trying to tape it the best I can. And when I did my slab prep, I ran a heavy 10 mil plastic underneath, and I did a 2-inch, just regular, regular foam board. It's the pink stuff. I ran a 2-inch thick piece up on the side, and in one sense it creates a nice buffer between the concrete wall for expansion and contraction. But what I did, which took some time, was a bit extra, I actually ran the 10 mil plastic along the bottom, and when I turned it up, I left it long, and then I came through and cut it, made sure I had enough slack where the concrete wasn't going to pull it. And then this is the plastic tape. I taped it to the plastic and then folded it over onto the foam board. And it was a little bit tedious, but once I got a good method down, it actually worked pretty well. Let me go over here. So this is how it finished out. It's taped over. And just with how the tape is and how the foam board is, it stuck well enough to hold up during the concrete finish. But when I come back, let me get it started over here. It's kind of hard to get in this corner without a pocket knife. There's my pocket knife. So it actually pulls up off of this foam pretty well. It was kind of cool. Like, it was sticky enough that it held up for the concrete finishes, but I'm coming back now and popping it up off of here. I already did it here. I'm folding it out so that I can tape it to the face of my impermeable wall insulation. I decided to run full sheets starting from the top, and that just leaves about 6 inches on the bottom. So perfect to get a nice layout, nice count, it looks good, run all of these, and then just ripped 6-inch strips along the bottom. So now I'm coming back and folding this up, popping these sheets back in, and then I'm gonna come back and tape this to the face. And the way I'm seeing it, I've got concrete walls behind here, and I've got a nice concrete wall sealer on the outside. I've got a drainage plane, and then I did a gravel, French drain, footer drain around here. Did the best I could with that. So in theory, I never will have water pressure pushing from the outside, and I'll have, in reality, maybe a little bit, but basically almost no infiltration of water from the outside if it holds up over the years. Now from the footer below, I'm gonna have just slow capillary action through the concrete. Concrete holds a little bit of moisture. So eventually they'll go through the footer, and eventually they'll start climbing the walls at a very slow rate. So I'm not thinking, oh, next year is gonna have issues, but I'm wondering 10, 20, 40 years down the road with this house, how wet is this concrete gonna get behind here? Is it gonna be basically fine, or is it gonna be soaking wet after a while? Where's this moisture gonna go? Well, It could be that there's enough capillary action that it transfers through and it finds another way out slow enough that any dehumidifying or HVAC, air conditioning on the inside dries it out. Or it could be that it starts collecting, not condensing maybe, but maybe enough that it starts creating water particles on the backside of this Thermax. 20 years down the road, what's going to be happening? What's this concrete going to be doing? So I was thinking it through, and since I'd prepped the slab like this, to the best of my ability, connects to plastic, which goes underneath the entire slab. So besides, maybe if a piece of tape came loose during the concrete pour or somebody poked a hole by accident, this slab is pretty protected. Like, we're not taking moisture up from the ground. Then any water droplets that might potentially condense on the back of this, which, is pretty unlikely, but if it ever does, it is gonna go down. And instead of coming down and hitting my wall framing, which is going here and soaking into wood, and then I'm relying on the dryness of the house to draw the moisture out of that, I'm trying to pull this up, flip it up onto here and tape it. So basically, and since I've got the 2-inch foam underneath here, any water that connects back here falls down into this foam, which falls down onto the footer, goes underneath, back into the gravel underneath the slab. So basically, through this sheathing here, the back side transfers over to the front side as the water impermeable, no water transfer through into the slab. And the way I'm seeing that, I'm doing it myself. I'm making it as well installed as possible. All of these are taped on all the seams here. These technically have a hole back here. It's so low chance of anything there. Debating on just not worrying about that, or maybe I'll pop a piece of foil tape over top of each of the lower ones. But really, I'm creating a total isolation from this slab up the wall up until the very top of these is basically a shell that doesn't let water in. And worst case scenario, I got a couple of drips that work their way in some weird way. That's when dehumidifiers and everything handle it. But otherwise, I haven't seen people do this detail where you just take the time to tape this and flip it up and tape it to the face of the foam. It's pretty awesome, I think. Be kind of curious if anybody's got a different opinion. Oh, and if you're wondering how this is so cleaned up, this foam, I did attach it to the walls, but it had some flex. So the concrete guys, they just use their laser levels to finish it, which actually ended up, you can kind of see it here, in the most case, this ended up pushing down and the concrete kind of went on top. It was kind of messy. All I did is, as soon as it was safe to walk on, next morning, it took almost nothing. It was just like the back of a broom handle to just chip the concrete here, loosen it up before it cured hard. And basically I could just sweep out the concrete from the tape. The tape made it where it didn't stick hardly at all. So it was a great setup all around. And my goal is to have it sealed from the vapor barrier down here all the way up to those. Those are impermeable. So basically there's no access to any kind of vapor coming out until we get to the top. And at that point, it would be such minimal moisture, it'd be like questionable if it'll ever become a factor. So I'm geeking out a little bit about it. I might be overthinking it, but on the other hand, there's such horror stories with mold that, if it takes me a few more hours to do this detail and feel pretty confident that there's little to no chance of anything coming in, I think that's about as good as it gets. I'd be curious if anybody else has anything to add to it or point out that I'm missing in my thinking. All right.